Hi everybody, AJ here. Thanks for stopping by my channel. Hey, did you notice I learned to make a thumbnail? Well, at least I think I did. I guess I won't really know until this video uploads, so wish me luck. Anyway, today I'm going to be taking you through a project I started over a year ago when I lived in Ohio, when we were refinishing our basement. I was actually building this dartboard cabinet to go into that basement and kind of give it a pub feel. I actually wanted this cabinet to end up looking very old, handmade and rough, and something that may have hung around for like 100 years in a pub in England. So I think I accomplished that goal. It looks pretty good to me, and I'm pretty happy with it. So let's go through the backstory of how I got to where it is now. First thing I did was go scrounging behind a local big furniture store for scrap pallet wood with only a rough idea of what size and materials I would need. Furniture stores go through a lot of pallets and often advertise their old pallets as free for the taking on sites like Craigslist, so if you live near a decent sized city, it will probably be fairly easy to find someone happy for you to take away their trash. I take tools with me and break down the pallets on their site to make them easier to transport since I don't have a truck. And for this project, I was fortunate finding a large number of small oak slats that were nearly the same size, as well as a small, nearly square pallet that was just about the perfect size for this project. This would serve as a ready-made base to build my cabinet from. I started by adding vertical slats between the three existing vertical members on the pallet, creating a smooth surface of the cabinet to which the dartboard would be mounted. This immediately made the mounting base more sturdy, but I wanted to add to the Z bracing on the back to make it even better. To accomplish this, I fitted 2 additional braces, creating an X brace pattern on the back. This is intended to give the cabinet a very even support against the wall once it's mounted. Next, I cut the top, bottom, and side pieces that would create the cabinet box that would enclose the dartboard. These were attached with their rear edges flush with the rear cross bracing, giving full support around the perimeter of the cabinet once it was mounted to the wall. At this point, I stopped building to fire seal the wood using a MAP gas torch. I chose fire sealing versus paint or stain for a couple of reasons. First, I was looking for an aged, rough appearance to the cabinet, and second, this method is faster than sanding and staining the wood. Using a torch to burn off the rough surface of the wood and creating a distressed appearance was much easier than trying to create a faux patina look. Even though it wasn't really necessary, I did fire seal the back of the cabinet as well. Here you can see how the sides are mounted flush to the X bracing, giving it a really nice and solid mounting surface for the cabinet. Now that the basic cabinet was roughed out, I turned my attention to creating the doors. To do this, I figured out the width needed for each door and then calculated how many of the smaller slats would be required for each one and how wide each one of those slats would need to be. Then I ran each slat through my table saw twice. The first time was to smooth and square off one side of the slat, and then I ran it through again to square off the other side and cut the slats to the needed width. By doing it this way, it gave me good square, smooth edges on each side of the slats to ensure they would glue together nice and solid to become the cabinet doors. After the glue set, creating my rough door panels, I used some scrap steel strips that I scavenged out of a neighbor's trash pile to band the slats together to make the door more solid and keep the slats from ever separating. This also gave the doors an appearance of a much older construction method, which is part of the aesthetic I was going for. At the time, I didn't put a lot of thought into how I actually banded the doors together, but in the end it worked out pretty well, as you'll see later. At this point, the project stalled. I spent a lot of time searching for free or cheap hinges that would physically work with the cabinet design as well as fit the vintage aesthetic that I was going for. However, I kept coming up empty. I did find some very expensive options, but I just wasn't willing to shell out that much money for the project. And I was just about to make my own hinges from scratch when I came across 4 heavy-duty 12-inch galvanized barn door hinges for only 15 bucks. so I decided to try and make them work. Since the cabinet isn't quite 4 inches deep, and each side of the hinge was 6 inches long, some cutting was going to be necessary to make these work. After some playing and thinking with the hinges, I ended up cutting one side of the hinge short and leaving the full width, and then on the other side I left it the full length of it, but cut it really skinny, matching the steel banding on the doors. Now that I had all the structural pieces necessary to complete the cabinet, I still needed one important element to give the overall vibe that I was trying to achieve: a cool old motorcycle tire. I took this tire and very carefully used a razor knife to cut it in half around the circumference to make a surround for my dartboard. Okay, so now that you're caught up to where I built the basic bones of the cabinet, let's go through some of the little finishing touches I did in order to actually get it to where it's usable, and it's in my office now here in North Carolina. The first thing you notice on the cabinet is the big AJS logo. It's actually an AJS motorcycle logo. And it's also my initials, but it's one of my favorite makes of bikes, and I own one, and I wanted to have that on display on my cabinet. When you come up to the cabinet and get a little closer, you see the steel banding strips that were attached to doors. I actually used Allen head bolts to give an appearance of rivets to make it look even older going across. And then on the inside I used square head nuts, which is not a modern fastener, so it gives it an older appeal to someone that knows what they're looking at. On the side, I attached the hinges with brass screws, and you can see how the hinges are starting to patina a little bit. I wire brushed off the galvanization onto the hinges and tried to make them look a little older, and they're starting to get that appearance. The top one up here is looking a little older. I might end up using some kind of acid to etch those to make them look even a little more older. But overall, I'm pretty happy with them. I did end up liking how beefy the actual barrel part of the hinge is. It makes the doors really good and sturdy. Opening up the cabinet, you can see where I've added chalkboards to keep score on. And the chalkboards are actually powder-coated pieces of metal that I cut out of some scrap and had just enough to make them fit. And I took and tucked them under the edge of the steel banding in order to hold them in place. They're also glued, but they're really good and sturdy. And I did purposely rough cut the edges of the metal. They're not nice and square, and I didn't want anything to look really perfect on this. I wanted to embrace a rough, quick construction type build. Fitting the hinges was kind of challenging. I had to do some creative notching inside the cabinet to get the hinges to not only fit and keep the doors in the correct position, but then also close. You can see where I had to notch back into the wood to allow for the barrel of the hinge. You can see where I used the square nuts to attach the hinge through the strapping. And in the video earlier, I mentioned where I was very fortunate the way I worked out my placement. I had the double layer of steel going this way, which gave a place for the hinge to mount. That might not, if I'd put this overlap part here, it probably wouldn't have worked out as well. So I got fortunate there. Inside, I did make places to mount darts just simply by drilling holes. I was getting ready to build holders for my darts into the cabinet, but then I realized it would be just as simple to do that. And so I've got placed on each side below the dartboard, and you can see my tire surround that I mounted. And then I also made a place to put 6 darts up on top. So the darts, these darts over here are my darts, those are my wife's, and then those are guest darts. Mounting the tire was really easy once I thought about it. I ended up just pre-drilling the bead on the tire and then using a black drywall screw to screw it straight through to the back of the cabinet. 4 of those around the perimeter, and it's held in place really good and sturdy. So yeah, that's how it worked out. I'm really happy with it. It's good and solid mounted to the wall. Now, admittedly, the tire surround isn't the best type of dartboard surround. You really, when you don't want to mess up your dart points by hitting the wood behind here, which, you can slip a dart in here. And if you hit the tire itself, chances are, most likely the dart won't stick in the tire. It normally bounces out. So that's not the greatest overall. So hopefully most people will actually just hit the dartboard. So that's my dartboard project. Overall, I'm very happy with the way it turned out. The one challenging part for me was trying to do what I call embracing the suck. I purposely went at this project without a plan. I just kind of built it as I went and figured things out and made things work. I wanted it to look handcrafted and not professionally made. So for me, when I had an error in something, I tried to keep it, which was difficult because I'm kind of a perfectionist on projects like this. So trying to be happy with something that was close enough and constantly reminding myself that's the end goal you're going for was counterintuitive for me. But overall, now that it's done, I am very happy with it. And I really enjoy playing darts on it. So I hope you liked it. I hope you enjoyed the process. I do apologize for not actually filming construction of the project, but like I said, I started this over a year ago and I wasn't really even planning on documenting, how I made it. So I've got a few other projects that are already completed that I'm looking forward to sharing as well. They're unfortunately, they are gonna be in that same kind of format with very little actual hands-on making. In the future, I will try to do projects and show the actual construction process. So hope you'll still enjoy them when we get there to the new ones, to the projects I've already completed. But anyway, yeah, that's about it for this time. Hope you liked it. If you did, hit that like button, comment, ask questions. Hey, subscribe, and hopefully I'll be making more of these. I do plan to try to hit a video every 3 weeks. I think that's pretty ambitious for me, the way I'm starting out with just learning how to edit and everything. So hopefully I'll see you in another 3 weeks. Thanks. Take care.